Hey, I'm here with Jason Holley, Patricia Walsh with the International Association of Ethics and Astrology. And Jason brought this great idea to us about putting together a series of the ways that astrologers are challenged with ethics in practice. So we're calling this Ethics in Practice, and Jason is going to discuss a particular dilemma that came up for him and some of the facets of how he dealt with it and why, it would be educational for everybody. But first, let's hear from you, Jason. Tell us
Yeah.
about you.
Well, I'm an astrologer. I've been practicing astrology for 30 years with clients. And I'm also a psychotherapist that I've been doing psychotherapy for about 15 years. And I actually have taught ethics stuff for psychotherapists. So I'm pretty passionate about this group that you founded. It feels like it's really important. And my favorite way to teach ethics is to wrestle with dilemmas together. Because it's ethics, it's complex, but there are guiding principles.
Sure, there's a lot of thinking that comes in and challenges, right?
Yeah,
And I think as astrologers or therapists, whatever way we interact with people's psyches, we always have challenges and
yeah.
need to question ourselves, right?
Mm.
So you have a particular case you want to talk about where you came up with an ethical dilemma. So just tell us a little bit about it. What happened?
Yeah, I called it the case of the gift that wasn't. Like, uh, just to keep it brief, it's basically that a client who I had seen in the past, who was a returning client, wrote to ask for a session, and in the course of his email, where he was asking for a session for himself, which he had marked confidential, he began to share some concerns about his partner's use of pornography. And I've also read for his partner in the past. And so at the end of the email, he then also says, can you set up a gift reading for my partner? So, this sets up the situation where he shared this about the partner's porn use pretty extensively, and then says, I want to gift my partner with a reading.
Oh.
So I'm smiling because it's complex, right?
Mm. So what did it feel like for you when that came up? Did you realize like right away this is an ethical dilemma, or how did it hit you when he asked you that?
It's interesting. For sure, it immediately flags. In this case, it really does flag for me because usually the one of the ways I know is my body, and I remember feeling immediately kind of tight in the stomach, and also frustrated with the client, for asking me to kind of hold this information and this complexity
Mm.
rather than being able to process it themselves, which is going to happen. So it's not that I would hold that against the person, but I felt a little daunted, probably like the client themselves felt about the situation, right? So often we get induced into the inner world of the client. And so, in the same way that for him, this felt unmanageable and his best strategy was to kind of dump it in the email to me, I also felt like something had been dumped into me.
Yeah.
Uh, and a lot of feelings will come up. So whenever there's that kind of thing that comes up, it's a little bit of a flag, right? Like something's going on here.
Well, and I'm sure all of your years of working therapeutically with people gives you that understanding that,
Yeah.
transference happens through our senses or our body
Yes.
sensations or thoughts or even antagonistic feelings we might have towards somebody, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that was alarm bell for you at that time.
Yeah.
That
Right.
feeling came up. So what did you do?
Well, I responded to his email. I, said I'd be glad to do a reading with him because that was the initial request in the email. Be glad to do a reading with him, and I also said that yes, of course, what you've shared with me is confidential. I said, but I would not be able to do the reading for your partner because I wouldn't feel that I can offer them the kind of neutrality that would be appropriate to an astrologer client, reading. And if I was carrying this sort of secret information without the ability to inform the client. So I said, if you want to share with your partner what you have shared with me, and then you want to do the gift and you want to do it, I might be able to do that, but I'm not going to be able to do it this way. I just really made it clear. Yeah, I was going to look at the actual email, but that's what I said. Yeah.
Mm. And how did your client respond?
Actually, very positively. This was, I think it maybe took me a couple of days to reply. And then they replied that they had realized that it was off, in quotes, it was off for me to send this in any case. And actually then, as will so often happen, right, anytime there's an action in a counseling relationship, whether it's psychotherapy or astrological counseling, anytime something threatens the container or the basic boundaries, which this action did, right? Anytime that happens, it's almost always can be seen to be connected to the issues the person is in a session for, right? And for astrologers, we can usually see it in the chart, like, oh, it's showing you what the issue is, or one of the issues is. So that happened here, where it's like this person is trying to process their overwhelm, and no surprises as to the involvement of outer planets with personal planets that was going on by transit, right?
So you said you took a couple days. What was your process during those? Because I'm sure you were. No,
honestly, at this point, it has been a while that I've been doing this. So if this one runs pretty quick. This one ran pretty quickly for me. But really, I was just being busy for 2 days. I know I did. It does take a minute though, right? Anytime this even though I have been doing this for a long time, it still takes a minute to just sort and really be clear, like, what is going on here. And this isn't, of course, the most terrible dilemma I've ever faced in practice, but it is a moment where you have to kind of, okay, well, what does feel right here? I have, whenever I think about ethics, I always feel like there's a need to have in your work, very clear parameters that are clear to everyone, like meaning whoever's working with you. And there's also some kind of reasonable thinking through process for things that your parameters can't anticipate, right? Like, it's not like I have a ethical policy in my head that says, if asked for a gift reading by a person who shares, I don't have any algorithm like that. But I have a thinking through process where I'm, how do I, take my time and kind of tease it apart a little bit? Like, what's my issue? Am I overreacting? Is it really that big of a deal if I know that something about someone for a reading, right? Or there's a lot of different pieces. And then also, finally, I would say, I also always think it's just, one has colleagues for a reason, right? We are able to discuss these things with each other with appropriate confidentiality and so on. And by the way, I'm realizing we didn't name this, but no identifying information in here should be taken to be sacrosanct, like gender and all that. I change people to protect their anonymity. So I just want to be really clear too about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So did you, what was your outcome from this situation? Like, as far as, did you establish or have you established a kind of no gift reading thing, or what is?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. In this case, I feel like because part of what I was thinking about having cases and how they help us is, what are the ethical principles in play, right? And to me, the two principles that jump out from this case, one is the emailing partner's right to confidentiality, right? Like, they've shared this, and there's that. And then there's also the partner's right to relative neutrality with their astrologer, right? And these appear at first to be in contradiction, right? Like, if I keep the secret for the client and do the reading, then I'm honoring the confidentiality, but I'm violating, I'm not showing up in the reasonably neutral way to the other client. Like, and when I say reasonably neutral, we're never neutral, right? We're always embedded. We're inside of all kinds of assumptions. All of us, nobody can claim pure neutrality, but reasonable neutrality to me means that you're not like already invested in a certain direction or operating with a certain big amount of information or projections or whatever that would just really change how you will experience the person. So it's not about perfect neutrality, but it is about striving for reasonable levels of neutrality. And so if I provide that, then I feel that I have to, break the confidentiality of the first client. So this is, to me, most ethical dilemmas, this is where we're put. It's like, how do I honor both all of what I'm up to? And so, in general, for me, I will say, I believe that I could bring a reasonable neutrality even with this information in the field. But I'm an ethical conservative. Like in that situation, I'm like, why would I want to make this messier than I need to, right? Why would, especially when there's a million other astrologers and somebody else can see this person who is not carrying this porn info.
And that's the other side of it too. I mean, I think the realization that, I think so many times we want to be helpers, healers, right? And so people feel like if somebody brings something to them that they may feel that, oh, ethically I'm bound to, respond to this person's need. When in reality, having a good referral list is also sometimes the best way we serve, right?
Yeah, it's exactly. And I think in this case, if there was and I actually did say that, like, if you want to gift a reading, I can, and that's why I wanted to pull the email. I knew there's something I was leaving out. I did say, if you want to gift a reading, then you could do that with another astrologer if you don't want to tell your partner what you told me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just thinking, in my own practice, I shy away from gift work, but just from experience in just sharing that, for myself, sometimes it's the intention of why somebody's gifting and because it's kind of what came in your session as well.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. Right. This is not a gift. This is a make him stop looking at porn.
Exactly, right. And
one reading, with one astrological reading.
Yeah, and lots of time, and that's going to come into the session, right? Lots of times a parent is like, oh, my child is, and having somebody drag somebody else, well, that's a no for me. Having somebody drag somebody else to a session is that's the first no.
Yeah.
But the person's own intention. No, it doesn't mean that gifting somebody a reading isn't just, hey, this would be a great, but when I have done that, when I feel that the intention is clear and clean and I'm, there's a clear boundary on both sides, I'm sure that when that person comes, the first thing that I say to them is, this is your session. Anything that happens between you and I is contained within here, and it is your choice. I want you to realize it's your choice to share or not share with the person who gifted you. So feel empowered to do that, and I think that's important.
Oh, I completely agree. I mean, that's one of the things I know. Part of the beauty of talking about an actual case is we all have different things we're going to see about it and different ways to approach it. And one of the things that I feel I could have done to sidestep the whole thing was just to say, I don't do gift readings, because I generally do not do. That is actually because it's my experience too that, and certainly, especially if you have an ongoing relationship that somebody's funding or third party payer, you basically have a shadow client in the room, and it's whoever's paying for it. And whether you feel influenced or not, you're just going to naturally not want to speak against that person or not want to, whatever the thing is. It's like, it will have an influence, the fact that someone else is involved. So we either have to feel clear about what that is and make it clear with the clients. I love what you just described as the things that you do, before the, opening the space is like really protecting it from that.
Right.
But
as much as possible, right?
Yeah. I only would have considered this is because I've seen them both before. We have existing relationships, and a gift reading is congruent to their relationship usually, but this person was kind of triggered by everything going on. But yeah, otherwise, an easy answer to avoid. Oh, but the second thing I was going to say is, so there's I could have just closed it down. No, I'm not doing gift readings. But also, I wanted to also name the ethical dilemma, in part because of representing our profession, right? Like, people don't realize that as astrologers, we are, we don't have professional, licensure in that sense, although we do have really good programs out there that will certify you, one of which you teach. But, we have many of those but I think that the more we as astrologers can educate people in what they should expect ethically from astrologers, right? So for me to take the time and say, this is where I stand on this issue, and here's why. It communicates a professionalism in astrology that I think is important for people to experience. And I want that person to understand why this would not be appropriate. And I want
Yes.
them to know that I'm taking care of your boundaries and future
The
client
other,
boundaries.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a beautifully put. And also, I think it depends on the kind of astrology somebody's doing too, right?
true.
And the kind of
Oh, that's
astrology
true.
that you and
Yeah.
I do have a lot to do with more of a therapeutic kind of relationship, or really,
Yeah.
digging into kinds of issues that people would confide in us,
Hmm.
that are deep and personal. So that's where boundaries really, really, really need to be clear, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
is there anything else you would have done different, or anything you want to add in hindsight about this particular case?
I was, the thing about not having gift readings was something that I had noted, but we've covered that. And then, uh, I also think that one of the things I was thinking about, because, again, given that this is a thought experiment for us with other astrologers, it's like, okay, well, what happens if the client's partner emails me and asks for a reading, even though I didn't do it? Now I'm still carrying this information
Yeah.
about the porn use. And I think that there are multiple possible answers to that. One would be to decline. I would not decline. In my situation, because the partner and I are creating the container. It's not the gift reading. Partner and I are creating the container. I suppose it's because of years of being in a small town, long before we were Zooming all the time. And I was the astrologer and therapist in a small town. I hear things about people all the time who would then come in and do therapy or astrology with me. And I am confident of my capacity to not, to work with that when it's a clear container, right? It's the partner initiating it themselves, coming to me. I don't feel I need to break the other partner's confidentiality, right? I don't need to say, I heard you're using porn.
Yeah.
And I also don't feel I need to decline the reading. Now, if it were someone that I've never worked with, and all I knew was they use porn, and in the way that's problematic, nothing wrong with using porn, but they're more complicated story. But then I would probably decline it. But because it's a person I've read for in the past, there's also an issue of abandonment of a person. So we have to weigh so many different things.
Mm.
But if the partner was to write to me, and may still, that may happen, I will do the reading, and I will not disclose what I have learned, and I will feel that that is an appropriate choice, because it does feel like I can bracket that and be present with the person.
Hmm.
So this is complicated, because I think somebody else could say, oh, that's just not okay. And I think there's reasonable ways of arriving at both answers.
Well, you do bring up one thing that I do also make. I mean, and there's a difference, between working with somebody as we do in, therapeutic relationship and readings.
Yes,
But
true.
even in readings, and definitely in therapeutic relationship, if somebody says, "Oh, I want so and so to see you," or "I'm going to tell so and so about
Mm,
you,"
mm.
one of my first responses is always, that person needs to contact me directly,
Yes, yes,
right?
yes,
because
yeah.
because there's an energetic behind it.
Hmm.
Somebody seeking you out is drawn to you, and it's not just because of your ad or however they came across you. There's something magnetic within
Hmm.
them
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
knows, maybe this is my guy,
Yeah, I
right?
agree. Yeah.
And that kind of thing, it can happen through a referral, but I
Hmm.
think the person themselves needs to seek you out and explore that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, well, exactly. Or like you'll often have an older parent saying, "I want you to do a reading for my
Yeah.
daughter or my son," and you can feel, whatever you feel about their motivations. It might feel just like a really loving action. It might feel like they're wanting some certain result out of it, whatever it might be. But I always put that back and ask for the person to contact me directly,
Mm,
because it really needs to be clear that we're in this container. And in that situation, then if there is hearsay or things I've heard, it's just there's a capacity to bracket that. It's a different
right.
situation.
Well,
Yeah.
speaking of that, just one more question then. Do you do readings if a parent asks you for a child's chart or looking? Do
Oh,
they?
I meant an adult. I was thinking of adult child,
Oh,
like
okay.
a 50-year-old
Oh.
mother sends their 25-year-old daughter. I definitely do not do paid consultations for child charts.
Mm.
I do, I'll look at the chart of a person's child, like in a friend, casually with a friend,
Mm.
a little bit, but I don't really feel that there's consent from the child, so I don't
Mm.
proceed. That's my opinion on that. And I feel that it's just too hard to know how somebody's going to use that information.
Right.
So for me, I do not do that. If it were the child, I might talk about their chart with them. That would be different.
Yeah.
Like a younger, like a teenager or something like that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
to talk to the parents about their child's chart is for me not comfortable. In part because I think we're similar in this. I don't assume that because I have a chart, I really know much of anything until I
Yeah.
meet the person, right?
Right.
So,
Well, and sometimes what they are seeking, what the person is seeking from you is, becomes the meat of the session that you work with them, not just general information, right? It's not
yeah,
like you're just
exactly.
looking at a chart and going, oh, they have this or that, these tendencies. Yeah.
Not my style. Yeah,
I know, same here. Yeah.
I'm definitely wanting someone with skin in the game. They've got something they're looking at, and
That's the point. Yeah,
yeah,
that's the
for me,
point.
I'm not just here to tell you about yourself.
Right, right. Well, thank you. I mean, and really, thank you for the brilliant idea of being able to kind of discuss and explore and unpack and learn from each other's ethical dilemmas. And
Yeah,
hopefully, we'll have further conversations.
sounds great.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you too.
Okay.